So we're still using trig, sine, cosine, and tangent, except we're going to find angle measures. Just like before, the first thing I'm going to write at the top of my paper so that I can do all these problems is what? SOHCAHTOA. So we're going to find angle measures. And because they're angles, we're going to round to the nearest degree, so whole number. So just like we saw on the notes and our homework and that quiz, side lengths we can round to different things. Angle measures, I would say 99.9% of the time we round to a whole number. Okay. So we're going to kind of jump in because it's very similar to finding a side length. If you don't have a calculator out, you need one out. If you don't have one, you should bring me something so that you can trade for one. Just like with side lengths, what type of triangle do we have to have? A right triangle. Okay. And you'll notice that, and that's a 38 by the way, a 38 and a 45. You'll notice that the difference between these problems and our warm-up problems is that we don't know what the angle measure is, but we know what the side lengths are, right? Where before one of our side lengths was x and we knew what our angle was, okay? But the first few steps, nothing changes. So what do you think I'm going to use as my reference angle? The angle I want to find. So let's label our triangle based off that angle. What side is this? Hypotenuse and adjacent. Okay, so nothing right now is changing. I have the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. So which one of my trig functions, sine, cosine, or tangent, uses the adjacent and the hypotenuse? Cosine. So the cosine of my angle equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Okay, so still setup's the same. The problem is x is with the cosine. So we can't just divide by cosine. You actually have to have a value. But if you look at your calculator, so everyone look at your calculator, right above your trig function, so right above where it says sine, cosine, tangent, you should see sine -1, cosine -1, tangent -1. Those are all inverses. Okay, so I got a weird look when I said inverses. We're going to use the inverse to find angle measures. So just watch. So it's going to be x equals the inverse cosine of that fraction. Because if I multiply cosine by the inverse cosine, they end up canceling out. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So in my calculator, if you have this one, you're going to have to press second cosine, but it'll be cosine to the -1, and then I type in that fraction, 38 divided by 45. Okay, we're rounding to the nearest whole number, so what will my degree be? 32. I'm going to make a little note. To find angles, use the inverse trig functions. Okay, setup's exactly the same, but if you're looking for an angle, you're going to use the inverse function instead of the regular one. How what? How do you plug it in again? Okay, so do you have this calculator? I don't know who's asking. Yeah? So second, and then cosine, because if you look right above cosine, it says cosine to the -1. So second cosine, and then you literally plug in the fraction, 38 divided by 45. Okay, some of you have calculators where you have to work backwards. So if yours is one of those backwards calculators, you do 38 divided by 45 and then second cosine. Did everyone figure out how to use their calculator? Everyone got 32? Okay. So let's try another one. I'm just going to do one more together, and then I'm going to have you try a couple. The big thing is being able to identify whether you're solving for a side length or an angle. Okay, but we should know hopefully the difference between sides and angles. Okay, so let's label if x is our reference angle. What sides do I have? I have the adjacent again and the hypotenuse. So again, it's cosine. So the cosine of my angle equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Because I'm solving for angle, I'm going to use my inverse button. So in my calculator, I'm plugging in the inverse cosine of 6/9. Inverse cosine of 6 divided by 9. Whoops, you have to press the right buttons to make it work. There we go. You should have gotten 48. And remember, it's a whole number, so we're going to round with no decimals. Not too bad, hopefully. Okay, you're not talking to me, so you're good? Okay, I want you to try these two. Let's see how good we are. So take a second and solve these two problems. I'm going to come around and check your answers. Again, you're rounding to the nearest whole number. It looks like we have it, but let's go through it. So across from x is the opposite. Next to x is the adjacent, which is tangent. So the tangent of x equals 39/50. And we're using our inverse button. And when you round, because you get 37.5, you're rounding to the nearest whole number. Remember, 5 rounds it up, so you should have x equals 38. And then for the next one, I have the opposite and the hypotenuse, which is sine. So the sine of x equals 45/60. Again, we're using the inverse. And when you plug it in, you get x equals 49. Again, make sure you're rounding appropriately. You won't lose all your points if you don't round appropriately. However, you won't get full points if you don't round appropriately. How do we feel about that? Good? Okay, I'm going to give you a few problems for homework. The big thing is, again, understanding the difference between sides and angles. So when you're solving for a side, you use sine, cosine, tangent. When you're solving for an angle, you use the inverse of sine, cosine, tangent. Okay, but the rest of the process is the same. Any questions? Okay.